Over the past 3 months, I've played more than my fair share of Dying Light. I don't usually make videos like this, but Techland was nice enough to reach out and offer me early access to this beast of a demo. So I wanted to share with you all an in-depth look of what I experienced while playing. We'll go through multiple parts in this video, so feel free to skip around to wherever you want with the timestamps in the description. I feel I should mention a couple things before we get started. Number 1, I'm the kind of person that will go out of my way to not watch anything that will spoil a game for me if I already know that I'm gonna buy it. So with that being said, everything in this video is something I've seen for the very first time. I haven't even watched most of the trailers for the beast. Second thing to mention is that this is still only a demo, and things are likely to change before the game launches in... Oh my god, it's coming out in 22 days? Sorry about that. Anyway, we're plopped directly into the middle of the dialogue with our man Doug here after pressing play. He's the quest giver for the singular side quest that will be responsible for guiding us through the map. All you really need to know as the context here is that we are currently in Castor Woods, specifically inside of a town hall of sorts, and we just finished doing something for these people to gain their trust. Combat is one of the most important things to get right in a zombie game. Now, personally, I've always loved the combat from the previous games, so I was excited to see how it was expanded upon here. One tiny new thing to note is that there's now a beast meter under your health bar, and once it's full, you can, like, go beast mode or something, I don't know. No, seriously though, this is really cool. It brings me back to the old Dead Island days and reminds me of Fury. I've never run into a single person that dislikes the Fury from Dead Island, so this was definitely a step in the right direction. I mean seriously, just listen to the pure joy in my voice at the first experience I had with Beast Mode. Holy crap! Hell yeah! Oh, that was freaking sick.
What the hell happened here?
After exiting the town hall for the first time, Doug tells me to go do a thing, so naturally, I do as any person would do, and sprint toward the nearest zombie and whack him in the head with a machete. Comparatively to Dying Light 1 and 2, what I played here felt like a mix between the two. They have to know how much we like ragdolls and actual physics, and it feels like they tried to add in as much detail as they could to make it feel closer to the original game. There was weight behind every attack, and each one was rewarded pretty generously with the new gore system. I will say that the zombies, while still being zombies and are stupid, do seem to be more difficult to kill in this demo. It was very hard to not get grabbed by them and bitten, and after only a few encounters I felt like I needed to throw on the Shoe Warrior outfit from the first game that makes it less likely for biters to grab you. I was also sad to notice that the slow motion effects from Dying Light 2 were gone, the ones that would happen when you perfectly dodge or block an attack, though dodging did still give me a bit of invincibility frames. But we can't talk about combat without bringing up the new beast mode that the game introduces. Each kick, smack, block, struggle, and damage all slowly build up your beast meter, and once it's full, you have no choice but to go into an enraged state that basically supercharges all of your abilities. You can jump incredibly high, and when fighting, sometimes you'll go into a random instant kill animation when you press the attack button, though it does seem to be a bit different for heavies. I still had to run up to them and press the interact key to perform a takedown on them, but man was it worth it when I did. You do have the ability to prematurely end your reign of terror, but it would drain almost all the beast bar each time I did. I also have to make sure to note to you all that you can lose HP while in the beast state, unlike in Dying Light 2, so make sure you don't go too crazy while unleashing the beast. A few other things to mention that I know a few of you are probably wondering about. The dropkick was one of the best abilities available to me in the demo. It would always send them absolutely flying, and feels like the Dying Light 2 dropkick with more gravity applied to the player. I've never really been big on upgrading my weapon in Dying Light, but the upgrade system felt a lot like Dying Light 2, with mods returning like Voltage, Puff, and Catapult. And finally, as of right now, there are 3 difficulties. Story is the easiest, survival is the medium choice, and brutal was the hardest difficulty made for veterans. You're probably seeing footage from 2 of my playthroughs, my first on the brutal difficulty, and my second on the survival difficulty. Comparing the 2, I couldn't really feel much of a difference other than the amount of damage taken, but even on the hardest difficulty, enemies didn't feel too hard to kill, and I didn't feel like I was taking too much damage. I would say it felt pretty balanced, but I still kind of hope that they make a nightmare mode in the future. Parkour is just as important, if not even more so, in Dying Light than combat is. If you're not confident in your chances of winning a fight, you can just run away as fast as you can and hope you lose them instead. But before I go any further into this section, I need to preface this by saying that the parkour you're seeing is low-level parkour. During this experience, we were only level 4 to 5, so I might not be moving or climbing as fast as I could later on in the game. A big point of contention in the community is that the parkour in Dying Light 2 felt way too floaty for people's tastes. Personally, I loved the parkour and thought the pacing was great, but it definitely changed the experience when assisted parkour was on. So, good news in both of those regards, there's far less floatiness, and everything feels very physics-based. There's still a bit of the moon jump, as some of you called it in my earlier videos, where holding the jump button keeps you in the air longer, but it's nothing like the high jump skill from Dying Light 2. In fact, there were a lot of gaps where I knew I'd only make it with a running start and a dash. It felt like a mixture of Dying Light gravity and jump height, with Dying Light 2 parkour such as the far jump ability, rotate jump, and wall run. In general, I would say the parkour felt really nice once you got moving. Climbing vertically could be a bit slow at times, but that could be rectified later on with a parkour expert-like skill. The movement feels grounded and heavy, it was fairly responsive to any direction changes I wanted to do, and after getting the hang of how far I could actually jump, it felt really nice to clear gaps between buildings. I frequently found myself just parkouring for fun without even thinking about it. But of course, eventually the sun goes down whether you want it to or not. So I took this opportunity to put myself and the parkour through the ultimate test, obtaining and surviving a max level chase. The chase was extraordinarily easy to start. After finishing another mission Doug sent me on and getting blown up, I woke up to find a volatile next to me. And then another one. And then another one. And I also had half HP. I was in danger. I don't know if it's just the way things are now, or maybe the brutal difficulty increased the amount of volatiles there were, or maybe the game just wanted me to die, but I encountered 8 of them 10 seconds after waking up. The low-level night chase sequence was probably some of the most fun that I had in the demo. The volatiles didn't spit at me doing a ridiculous amount of damage, and the terrain that I was running on gave me plenty of opportunities to chain together some really cool moves. Even during the times I probably wasn't in grave mortal danger, it felt like I was because of the sound design and music. The only thing that I think I found an issue for was that it was relatively easy to lose the chase. I found myself having to slow down fairly often to let them catch up to me in order to get the chase to max level like I wanted. But this seems like a relatively easy thing to tweak if needed, so I'm not that worried about it. Like in the previous section, I'll go ahead and talk about some things I'm sure a few of you are wondering about. Some skills from Dying Light 2 returned in the demo. Rotate jump, slide jump, far jump, tic-tac, double jump, etc. And all of them were available as the base kit of parkour, seeing as I only had these skills unlocked in the skill tree. Again, this might not be the case in the end, but for now it was. Some of the abilities that shined in Dying Light 2 were much less useful here with the higher sense of gravity and heaviness. My prime example being that a far jump was about the same distance as a normal running jump now. And finally, I've seen people wondering how parkour may integrate with environmental puzzle solving. Since they seem to be taking a step away from stamina-based climbing, it feels like they are taking a different approach, making you really think about how to reach your destination. The biggest example was when the game told me to climb to the top of this tower, and I had to figure out how to get here with no way of climbing directly to it. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that I am terrible with puzzles, so it took me way too long to figure out that I needed to run power to these things to rotate the gears and have it hoist me up on this bar. But this might be an example of the direction they could be going when it comes to the environmental puzzles. These games just wouldn't feel like Dying Light without its carefully crafted environments. I've personally always thought map development is one of the hardest parts of game development because it's constantly in front of the player to look at. For Dying Light though, the people who make these maps have double the challenge. The world not only has to look great and fit the atmosphere, but it also has to serve as the ultimate playground for the parkour system. At least with the bit that I was allowed to explore here, the map for the Castor Woods town felt pretty great. There were more than plenty of places to parkour, and a lot of times the buildings we could enter required me to do so from the second story of another nearby building, or by climbing. The rooms all felt different from one another, and I had a ton of options for places to explore. Some of the rooms felt a bit barren, but that could be intentional because it's been, 20 years since the first outbreak? It's not impossible for many of the houses in this area to have already been picked clean of furniture for wood and electronics. Along with the detailed world design, I also noticed a pretty considerable change to the lighting system. It was bright. Almost too bright. One thing I noticed while playing was that while the lighting system was absolutely beautiful, it sometimes made it difficult to see. It was very similar to real life when you try to look at something when the sun is in your eyes and you can't make anything out. The same could be said about those sun flares on the screen. I found myself at times moving behind a wall just so I could fight a zombie without being blinded. This was really cool for immersion purposes, but it also made me kind of wish that the sunglasses were actually functional. Thanks to this, once it became nighttime, I expected it to be some form of advanced darkness. But to my surprise, it was fairly bright at night. I suppose it could have been a phase of the moon that was responsible for how bright it was, but I was fully able to see in the dark without a flashlight, even after making certain that my brightness settings were set correctly. When compared to the dark of the first game, as you can see, it's clear which is still the darkest of the two. But since we're talking about the night, I think now is the perfect time to bring up the ambience. I'm usually a pretty big fan of sound design and how it's done in games, and I thought the ambience lent a lot more to my experience. It kind of felt like I was there, and helped me settle even further into my role as Crane in Castor Woods. The sound of the trees in the distance and the wind through the city, even down to the shutters on the windows of the buildings flapping, I enjoyed basically all of it. I already mentioned earlier that the chase was made even more scary due to the music, but nighttime, even without being chased, still put me on edge and made me not want to be spotted, especially when I heard a Volatile's footsteps in the distance. The only thing I noticed that might have helped my immersion is if the sound of my footsteps were a bit more quiet while stealthing at nighttime. This final section is where I'm going to put a lot of the things I didn't think quite fit the main combat, parkour, and environment sections. First, I think I need to talk about stealth. I'm probably the worst person to talk about stealth because of the lengths that I'll usually go to avoid it, but I did give it a shot just to see how it was, and honestly, I think for those of you who genuinely enjoy the quiet approach to interactions, you'll have a lot of fun here. Seeing a volatile walk next to me without spotting me was a cool feeling, and I found plenty of opportunities to escape a chase by going around a corner to break a line of sight and then hiding in an alley or bush to lose them. Normal zombies, on the other hand, did spot me pretty frequently though. The skill tree looks the most different out of the 3 games so far, branching off in the up, down, left, and right directions with a variety of skills in each one. These 3 skill trees seem to be normal skills you'd get based on leveling up, while the one on the right is a tree dedicated to beast mode related skills, and it seems you'd acquire these by getting whatever beast points are instead. I really enjoyed the customization options that were available in the inventory. If you find something better gear score wise that might offer more protection, but you don't want to have your face obscured, for example, you can just press this button right here and it's gone. You can also put on other pieces of gear you've picked up to kind of create your own outfit. Having this little bit of extra freedom with customizing Crane makes a big difference. I've always mentioned since the first days of Dying Light that I'd love to have a button to skip directly to the morning. That way we wouldn't need to sleep until night, sleep again, and then have it be morning. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got it. And finally, choices are still a thing sometimes in dialogue. Somewhat. At least in this mission. We have the opportunity to hear more dialogue from the lovely cast of voice actors, and can decide if we want to put this guy out of his misery or not. You can't, however, say no and then turn around to try and kill him. That doesn't work. My final thoughts on this demo was that it was a ton of fun. We only had one quest, but I easily lost track of time exploring, fighting zombies, parkouring, and running for my life. Each time I started a new save, I had 2 hours before the experience ended, and in the end, I spent 6 hours just soaking in the world and gathering this info for you guys. There are still a few things I didn't show though, so you'll have plenty to discover for yourself when the full game drops. Hopefully this video gives you some answers and makes the wait just a little bit easier. Special thanks to my subs and members, I appreciate you all, and once again, thank you to Techland for allowing me to participate in this experience. I'm curious to know if you all are more or less excited now for the Beast, so make sure to let me know that in the comments.